Hello, it's Matt O'Leary, and it's time for New Music Monthly, where I cover my most anticipated and favorite released albums in the past month. This time around, and generally for this year, I've found that I've been going back a little bit further than a month, just digging up some gems from the spring, the summer. And there's no exception here today. We've got about 6 or 7 albums that are really worth your time. Hopefully some obscure gems in the mix as always. You know how this works. I do kind of mini review style for these albums, so I'll give you a little bit of background, my reactions, some favorite tracks, etc., etc. Of course, let me know what I missed down in the comments below. First up is one of my favorite indie rock artists of the past 10 years or so, and the weird thing is he's only got 3 albums. One of which I don't even really like, but 2 of which are so unbelievably great that I'd still put him up amongst the favorites, and that is Chris Cohen, and this new album's called Paint a Room. If you're in the know on albums like As If Apart and Overgrown Path, then like me, you probably appreciate the incredibly underwhelming star power of Chris Cohen. No one could be more indie rock than Chris Cohen. No one could be further away from a pop star with a vocal tone that really can only be described as dull. But the writing. This is gentle, lo-fi indie rock with a lot of 60s and 70s kind of psychedelic and folk influences, some Baroque pop, extremely understated arrangements, but cleverness and complexity and catchiness in spades. The opening track, Damage, and the next track, Paint a Room, bring this brass and flute for a very jazzy, organic touch. Odd chord voicings and stuttering rhythms, some really strange vocal harmonies on Laughing. It's a musician's treat, and really a treat for me as someone who makes music in my bedroom. I find these arrangements so peculiar and inspiring. He's not for everyone, but if you haven't heard of Chris Cohen and you like or are resonating with anything I'm saying, then you gotta give him a shot. He's a super underrated artist and producer, and once a member of Deerhoof. Next up is an artist who was recommended by a subscriber, so definitely leave those comments because I have a small enough comment section where I actually read them and I actually listen to most of the things recommended. This guy comes from the band Improvement Movement, who I definitely need to cover on the channel. This is Clark Hamilton, aka Clark Sound, playing every single instrument, and there's very little post-processing on this amazing feat of an album, What is Sound? Clark has the folk purity of Fleet Foxes with the sardonic wit and the jazz pop chops of Steely Dan. Seriously. This is some folky, proggy, acoustic guitar driven music, very clean, very pristinely performed, and just this warm, woody 70s flavor. Yet deeply progressive, deeply jagged as well. Chords zig, they zag, rhythms whiz around, but also settle into infectious, danceable grooves like on Movie Theater or Dead Wrong. I think musos will really like this thing. You know, it's technical, but it still has quite a bit of pop sensibility as well. You know, it's an easy listen. And just a deeply undiscovered little wonder here. Shaping up to be a top 10 album of the year for me. Floridian band Magdalena Bay is back with more of their glistening indie electro-pop sound on their second full-length Imaginal disc. As someone who really didn't have a brat summer and still hasn't quite caught on to the 2020s wave of poptimism, Magdalena Bay caught my peripheral vision with their first album, Mercurial World, which I think fit into the same space for me as like Everything Everything, you know, with production that was just offbeat enough, but also songwriting that was just interesting enough to take it a step above a lot of modern pop out there that really bores me with some very generic chord progressions and very hypersexualized and melodramatic affectations. Big fan of the spooky disco on Cry For Me and the way the song just descends into madness in that middle section. It's like that sound, when you exit the club, everything kind of muffles and then you walk back in. Death and Romance was an instant hit as well. I mean, that piano line, the bass line, everything is working. So yeah, lots of bangers on this one, but also production and, like I said, just song structures that are left field and experimental enough to make those pop hooks land. Next up is another subscriber request, so hint hint. This is the Philly-born experimental indie art rock band Manman with their 7th album, Carrot on a String. Manman was a band I'd heard of. I feel like they made a run there in the late aughts, from like 2005 to maybe 2015. I would guess that that's where the majority of their records are. And their sound still very much links to the indie rock sounds, the trends of that time, Arctic Monkeys and Phenomena and the Black Keys. These contemporaries who are now turning into dad rock bands can definitely be heard in Manman's sound. I like their singer a lot. He's kind of a mix for me of like Toby Lehman from Dr. Dog and Damon Albarn. Their music's never really stuck with me, but this album's zany, it's fun, it's just quite a few tracks really into at the moment. I gotta say, recently I've been in the most busy and chaotic time of my life. I have 2 young kids, I have more demands at work, plus I picked up some part-time work, so this next album is definitely comfort food. So I gotta give a shout out to the classic rock legend, because when I sat down, put this album on, it was exactly what I wanted it to be. It was soothing, it was classically beautiful, it was not super surprising, but the songwriting was pretty solid, and that is David Gilmour's new album, Luck and Strange. Gilmore employs his signature blend of iconic, soulful guitar and dreamy, meditative soundscapes. I mean, Gilmore is the guy that you think of when you hear atmospheric or dreamy paired with rock. Although there's a touch of playfulness and a good variety across the track list to keep it from being just, a dour affair. The Piper's Call is an aptly titled, kind of Asian flavored, kind of Latin flavored one I've been jamming. Great vocal melody, unique textures, super interesting production overall. And Between 2 Points with his daughter Romany Gilmore is just pure comfort food. I mean, just a gorgeous tone from him as always. This one's not going to get any cred with people who really value originality, innovation above all, but I'm just super taken by the simple effectiveness of this album. I think the Chris Cohen and the Klark Sound albums are probably 2 of my favorites from the quarter so far, but this next one is right up there. And it has a lot of similarities to those albums as well, kind of folky, psychedelic, progressive indie rock. And that is Boston-born singer-songwriter Luke Temple with his 7th album under his name. I think he has other solo works as well, but under his name, and it's called Certain Limitations. Can I really offer myself now? Like I said, Luke Temple, super prolific dude. He also releases music under his solo moniker Art Feynman. The album last year, Be Good, The Crazy Boys, just fantastic. And so is Certain Limitations. It's definitely an understated sound, very similar to Chris Cohen. His voice, his just everything about it doesn't really jump off the wax, if you will. Like I said, kind of hazy, psychedelic indie rock, some Americana flavors as well. Artists like Chris Cohen, like Hand Habits or Sam Evian, maybe even Andy Schauf come to mind. Temple's vocals are haunting and soulful and kind of Paul Simon-esque, and his finger-picked guitar work is intricate and lush. It's a very soothing sound, like David Gilmour. There's a theme going on here, if you can't tell. And it just gets better with every listen. And the soothing sounds continue with what seems like the breakout album from this artist who I've been following for a while. They kind of do this synth pop R&B disco kind of thing, and that is Ginger Root with the album Shinbangumi.
The show starts soon and spinning around, not again.
Probably my favorite EP of a couple years ago now, I think 2022, was Nascimento by Ginger Root. It had all the funkiness of Wolfpack and all the kind of glossy 70s sound of a band like Once and Future Band. I also hear a strong connection between Ginger Root's sound and one of my favorite albums of the 80s, Age of Plastic by the Buggles. This has elements of elevator and library music and funky soul and Japanese city pop and psychedelic pop with a very Zombies-esque piano-driven sound at the core. So it's eclectic. Shinbangumi has everything in terms of production and sound design as the previous albums, but I don't feel like it hits as hard on the songwriting front as Nascimento. But there's no doubt this guy, Cameron Liu, is an amazing talent as a producer, and this blend of styles just really well done. And there's nothing but open roads and opportunity for this band ahead. So yeah, just go get it. So there it is, 7 albums that you should definitely go check out, ones I've been enjoying immensely over the last couple months. If you haven't yet, please do subscribe to the channel and like this video. And as always, thank you so much for watching.
That's what keeps this all exciting.